Hello everyone, welcome to the online lecture series of Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. I am Anjusri VK, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Today I will be handling Module 1 of Computer System Architecture. I divided Module 1 into 3 parts, and in this first part I will be discussing about mainly two things. The contents that I will be discussing here are about parallel computer models and evolution of computer architecture. Before going into deep about the computer system architecture, let us discuss about the introduction of computer system architecture. What is meant by computer architecture and what are the things that you will be learning in this particular subject. All these things will be discussing first. After that, I will be moving to the syllabus content. What is the purpose of computer architecture, or what is computer architecture? Computer architecture is concerned with the way hardware components are connected together to form a computer system. All of you know what is a building architecture. Building architecture is mainly how you are planning to construct a building. There will be an architect will be there, and you will be approaching that architect. So the architects will be deciding the plan, how you have to, where the kitchen will come, where the bathroom will come, where the dining room will come. All these things will be decided by the corresponding architect, and he will be developing a plan, and according to that plan you will be building, or you will be constructing that building. Similarly, a computer architecture is actually concerned with the way hardware components are connected together to form a computer system. How the hardware components are connected together, and because of that connection, how the system is actually formed. That is actually dealing with computer architecture. Also, it is acting as an interface between the hardware and the software. All of you know what is hardware and what is software. Software is something that we cannot see, or which is we cannot touch. That is software. And hardware is the components that we can directly interact, or we can directly see. So it is actually what architecture does is it actually acts as an interface between the hardware and the software. Also, computer architecture helps us to understand the functionalities of a system. Different types of functionalities are there inside the system at the architectural level, that means at the hardware level. So that type of functionalities can be also understood by means of a computer architecture. According to a programmer, what is architecture, or what is computer architecture? An architecture, according to a programmer, it can be defined in terms of instructions, addressing modes and registers. So a programmer will be viewing architecture in terms of these three. That means instructions. Instructions means the set of programming or the set of program codes, and the addressing modes you already know, registers you already know. So all these things are combined together, and this is the view for a particular programmer in terms of architecture. And while designing a computer system, the architecture of that system should be considered first. So before designing a building, you will be mainly dealing with the architect for deciding the particular architecture of that building. Similarly, before designing a computer system, the architecture of that particular system should be considered first. Where we have to space, or where we have to place the ROM, RAM, all these things we have to decide first. That is mainly architecture. And computer architecture also deals with high level design issues. So low level issues are there. While designing a system, we will face lot of issues. So architecture also deals with the high level design issues by designing a system. And mainly we can define architecture as architecture describes what the computer does. We can simply define architecture as architecture describes what the computer does, what the computer is going to do. That is actually architecture described. Next is computer organization. So this is a subject that you learned in S3. What is computer organization? Computer organization, it is actually concerned with the structure and behavior of a computer system as seen by the user. It is not dealing with the design. It is actually dealing with the behavior of the system, the structure and behavior of the system. That is computer organization. and also it deals with the components of connection that is present in a system. And computer architecture organization, it actually tells us how exactly all the units in the system are arranged and interconnected. All the systems, how the components in the system are arranged and how they are interconnected, which connection goes to which output device, all these arrangements will be done by the computer organization. How it is organized. Basically, an organization is done on the basis of architecture. You already know how you are going to construct a building before designing or before doing whatever be the steps for constructing a building. You will be basically first you will be deciding the architecture. Similarly, before organizing the system, you have to first design the architecture. Both the basis of organization is always architecture. And organization always deals with the low level design issues, and architecture always deals with the high level design issues. And organization involves physical components like circuit design, orders, signals, peripherals, etc. These are the different physical components that are coming under organization. Basically, we can explain organization as organization describes how it does it. That means how the computer is going to perform an operation. That is actually coming under organization. This is actually the basic difference between computer architecture and computer organization. Also, there is a wonderful career, those who choose computer architecture as their basic subjects. There are a lot of opportunities are there in companies like Intel, IBM, etc. So these companies are mainly recruiting computer architectures. So you have a wonderful career if you are choosing this as one of your basic subject. So this is actually the working of organization and or the difference of organization and architecture. This is a high level part that is shown at the top of the figure. So here you can see application program, application design, system design, computer design, logic design, circuit design, and computer component. And the top high level application program and application design, these are the software level features. And from computer design onwards, the hardware level features will come. And these are actually known as the computer organization. And the system design, how you will think the design will work, that is actually what computer architecture. So the figure actually mainly shows where the architecture and organization comes in the design of a system. Hope you already know one of the important milestone in the development of computer system architecture, that is von Neumann architecture. Von Neumann architecture is considered as one of the important milestone in the development of computer system architecture. So what is von Neumann architecture? It is actually an architecture that is having memory, control unit, and arithmetic and logic unit. So just refresh the concept. So this is the concept. Memory will be there. The memory is the one that is storing all the information. Arithmetic and logic unit is there. It is actually performing all the arithmetic and logic operations. And there will be a control unit. It is actually doing all the controls. That means it will be controlling the memory, it will be controlling the arithmetic and logic unit, and it will be also controlling the passage of data between the memory and the arithmetic logic unit. And definitely there will be input and output. The input will be directly accepting by the arithmetic and logic unit, and accumulator will be present inside the arithmetic and logic unit, and the accumulator will be doing all these operations. And after performing the operation, the data whatever is to be stored in the memory, that will be sent back to the memory, and the output that should be supplied to the user, that will be delivered to the user also. This is actually the von Neumann architecture, and it is developed in 1945 by the scientist von Neumann. And this prior to this 1945 also, there are so many developments were there. So some of them were the computers that were made with mechanical or electromechanical parts. The earliest mechanical computer can be traced back to 500 BC in the form of abacus used in China. The abacus is manually operated to perform decimal arithmetic with carry propagation digit by digit. And another one is in 1642 by Blaise Pascal. He developed a mechanical adder or subtractor. And later Charles Babbage came. He designed a difference engine in England for polynomial evaluation in 1827. Also different inventions were there, like the one developed by Conrad Hughes, then Howard Aiken, Howard Mark I IBM in 1944. There are so many developments were. So all these are the different milestones in the development of computer. The first topic I have to discuss here is parallel computer models. So from here onwards your syllabus starts. Basically the module 1 actually describes the historical milestones in the development of computer, and also it discusses about the difference or the distinguishes between the multiprocessors and multi-computers. And also it explains in the module, it explains about the supercomputers, parallel processors, vector processing, data parallelism, and these are the basic things that is coming in the module 1. And basically the module 1 is actually dealing with an introduction to the computer architecture. That means what are the different possible levels of architecture present in computer, and different categories of architecture. These are all the things that is coming in first module. And the first thing that is starting is parallel computer models. And here the developmental milestone or the historical developments in computer is actually explained. Over the past several decades, electronic computers have gone through 5 generations of development. And here you can see first, second, third, fourth. These are the different generations of computer models, and basically here 5 generations are explained. And each of the first 3 generations lasted about 10 years. The 4th generation covered a time span of 15 years. And these are explained here: first, second, third and fourth. And the first generation, it is actually starting from 1945 and ending in 1954. And about the first generation computers were built with a single central processing unit. Here you can see that the technology and architecture and software application, representative system. These are the 3 things that you have to explain about first generation computer. The first thing is it is actually it only have a single central processing unit, and it is performing fixed point arithmetic using a program counter. PC, accumulator, CPU, fixed point arithmetic, all these things you already learned, and you know what are these things. And along with that, it uses branch instruction and accumulators also. The CPU must be involved in all memory access and input-output operation. So the CPU will be involved in input-output operation, and also along with that it will be involved in memory access. All these things will be there. And it is mainly it is using machine or assembly language. So that is the low level language representation. So this first generation computers are mainly using assembly language or machine language. And the basic representative system or the example for first generation system is ENIAC. One is ENIAC. ENIAC means electronic numerical integrator and calculator. And another one is Princeton IAS and IBM 701. So that is all about first generation. And one of the important thing that you have to tell about first generation is the technology and architecture. That is, the main thing is vacuum tube and relay memory. So that is the basic concept that you have to explain about first generation computers. Vacuum tubes are vacuum tube is mainly used for building memories in first generation computers. So what is the disadvantage of vacuum tube? So when the power is not present, the contents that are stored in vacuum tubes is lost. That is the disadvantage of vacuum tube. Then comes to the second generation. Second generation system, actually it comes with index registers, then floating point arithmetic, multiplexed memory, IO processors. All these things are coming in second generation computer, and it is from the year 1955 to 64, another 10 years. And here the difference from the first generation computer is transistors. In the first generation computers, they used vacuum tubes for memories, and here instead of this vacuum tubes, in second generation, transistors are mainly using. And one more difference is there, floating point arithmetic. Instead of fixed point arithmetic, here floating point arithmetic is using. And the second, another thing is, it uses high level language. High level language, suppose examples are Fortran is there, Algol is there, COBOL is there, and this high level language is introduced along with compilers. What is the definition for compiler? Compiler is actually used for converting high level language into low level language. So the second generation computer is actually using high level language, and compilers are there for converting high level language to low level language. Also, it have subroutine libraries, batch processing monitors are there, and some representative systems in the second generation is IBM 7090, CDC 1604, UNIVAC LARC. So these are some of the examples of second generation computer. Next comes the third generation. The third generation computer, actually it is using ICs. So that is the difference. The first generation used vacuum tubes, second generation used transistors, third generation is using integrated circuits, otherwise it is known as ICs. And it also have microprogramming control, and this microprogramming control actually became popular with this generation. And also there are some more concepts are there. Cache memory. You know what is cache memory? Cache memory is a memory that is sitting in between the main memory and the processor. So if you need to perform, or if you need some data frequently, you can store the data in cache memory. And that is about cache memory. And pipelining is also there. Pipelining we will be discussing more in the coming modules. Pipelining is basically used for improving the performance of the processor. And along with that, it is also using look ahead processor. That is also another technology that we'll be discussing. And also it is using the concept of multi-programming, and also it uses time sharing OS, multi-user application. All these things are there, and all these multi-programming concept actually it is introduced in the third generation system. And due to this multi-programming, the IO and the CPU activities are interleaved among multiple user programs, and this led to the development of time sharing operating system. And the examples for this third generation systems are IBM 360, CDC, PDP. These are the examples. After that, the next one is fourth generation. It is from 1975 to 1990, and these are the parallel computers in various architectures. And the basic and the important thing that you have to discuss in this case is the introduction of semiconductor memory, and large scale and very large scale integration chips are available here. So in third generation we used ICs, and small scale integration is actually used there. And in the case of this fourth generation, we are using very large scale and large scale integration. Also we are using multiprocessors. Multiprocessor is also introduced here. And another important thing is vector supercomputer, multi-computers. So multiprocessors and multi-computers are also, we are also discussing these two things in this module itself. And the one more thing is there. One is multiprocessor OS, language compilers, and environment for parallel processing. All these concepts are actually coming in fourth generation. And this vector supercomputer, that also will be dealing in this module. And the basic example is VAX 9000, Cray XMP, IBM 3090. All these things are coming in module 4. And finally, the fifth generation, this system actually it is emphasizing the superscalar processing. That means the processors that have high performance. So that type of processors are known as superscalar processor. So that also we will be discussing in the same module. And also along with that, it is using MPP, that is massively parallel processing, and also VLSI technology is using. That is the main difference between fourth generation and fifth generation. In third generation, we used this small scale integration, and while coming to fourth generation, we are using very large scale integration, and in fifth generation, we are using advanced VLSI processors memory. So that is the difference. And also about the switches also came here. High density packaging, scalable architecture, all these are coming here. And along with the superscalar processors, systems on chip, massively parallel processing, grand challenge application, heterogeneous processing, all these are the different technologies or the architectures that are using in fifth generation. So we have already seen the different generations of computer, and these are all some images that are related to the technologies used in those different generations. First of all, this is the vacuum tube that is used in first generation, and this is the transistors that used in second generation, and these are IC chips that are using in the third generation, and the fourth generation onwards the VLSI chips. Next topic is regarding the elements of modern computer. Hardware, software and programming elements of a modern computer system are discussing here. The first one is the computing problems. A modern computer is an integrated system which is consisting of machine hardware, an instruction set, system software, application program and user interfaces. Depending on the nature of the problem, the solutions may require different computing resources. For numerical problems in science and technology, the solution demands complex mathematical formulation and intensive integer or floating point computation. Similarly, if it is an alphanumeric problem that is related to business or government, the solutions will be efficient transaction processing, large databases, and information retrieval operation. There are other problems related to artificial intelligence, and the solutions will be then the logic inferences and symbolic manipulation. So these are some type of computing problems. So these computing problems will be the input to our system. So in order to perform operations on this computing problem, we require algorithms and data structure. So the second component is algorithm and data structure. Special algorithms and data structures are needed to specify the computations and communications involved in computing problems. Most numerical algorithms are deterministic, using regularly structured data. So in order to perform this algorithms, we need a defined data structure. So the data structure is used for storing the data elements, and algorithms will be used for processing the particular data items that is stored in the data structure. So we have to use a data structure and the algorithm that is apt for our problem. And the next one is about the hardware architecture and the hardware resources. The system architecture of a computer is represented by here as three nested circles. A modern computer system demonstrates its power through coordinated efforts by hardware resources, an operating system and an application program or application software. The processors, memory and peripheral devices form the hardware core of a computer system. Special hardware interfaces are often built into I/O devices such as display terminals, workstation, optical page scanners, magnetic ink character recognizers, modems, network adapters, all these are special hardware interfaces. And software interface programs are also there. Hardware interface and software interface are required. So the operating system will be interacting with the hardware using the hardware interface, and the application software will be interacting with the operating system, or the operating system will be interacting with the application software using the software interface programs. The software interface program mainly includes file transfer system, editors, word processors, device drivers, etc. These programs greatly facilitate the portability of a user program on different machine architecture. So that is all about the nested circuit. And the one thing that is important here is the operating system. Already you know what is the functionality of an operating system. An effective operating system manages the allocation and deallocation of resources during the execution of user program. Beyond the OS, application software must be developed to benefit the users. And mainly, the algorithms and data structure that are used here should be mapped to the corresponding, depending upon the corresponding architecture. So mapping here that is specified here, it is a bidirectional process matching algorithmic data structure with hardware architecture. So depending upon the algorithm or the data structure that we have to map that algorithm or data structure to the corresponding hardware architecture, and vice versa also. So this is a bidirectional task. So efficient mapping will benefit the programmer and produce better source code. The mapping of algorithmic and data structure onto the machine architecture include processor scheduling, memory map, inter-process communication, etc. So all these coordinates an effective mapping of algorithmic data structure into hardware architecture and vice versa. These activities are usually hard architecture dependent. So that is all about mapping. And another one is system software support. So software support is needed for the development of efficient programs in high level language. So in order to implement this hardware, or in order to implement this data structure and algorithm, we need a programming strategy. So normally we will be implementing this in a high level program. And this high level programming, and about this high level programming, the source code will be always written in a high level program and must be translated into an object code by using an optimizing compiler. The compiler assigns variables to registers or to memory words and generate machine operations corresponding to high level language operator to produce machine code which can be recognized by the machine hardware. A loader is actually used to initiate the program execution through the OS kernel. So the high level language that is developed for implementing this particular architecture or this particular data structure and algorithm must be mapped into a low level language. So the binding between the high level language and low level language will be done by, or the binding between the language and the architecture will be done by the compiler and a loader. The resource binding demands the use of compiler, assembler, loader and OS kernel to commit physical machine resources to program execution. The effectiveness of this process determines the efficiency of hardware utilization and programmability of the computer. So mainly the high level language, the whatever be the problem that we have, that is for in order to implement that program, we'll be developing an algorithm and selecting a particular data structure, and after that, and this architecture that we will be selecting, it should be it must depend on the hardware architecture that we have, and we have to convert this algorithm and data structure into a particular high level language, and for that we have to use some programming strategy. And if we need to convert this high level language into its low level language representation, we need to bind this high level language into the corresponding low level language dependent. The do corresponding low level language which is architectural dependent, and that is by means of binding, and this binding will be doing by a compiler and the loader. The compiler will be converting the high level language into corresponding machine language representation, and the loader will be initiating the loading operation in order to execute the particular program. That is all about the entire architecture. And the efficiency in its implementation, portability across different machines, compatibility with existing sequential languages, expressiveness of parallelism, and ease of program, all these depends on an efficient or effective programming. And in depending on this, we will be evaluating the performance of the machine. So that is all about the elements of the modern computer. So these three nested circles actually decides the architecture of the particular machine. That is, the hardware will be there, operating system will be there, and an application program will. So this entire figure indicates the elements of a modern computer. Next is about the compiler support. There are three. Compiler is actually used for converting high level language into low level language. That means the binding operation in the modern computer will be doing by the compiler. And there are three mainly compiler upgrade approaches are there. One is pre-processor, next one is pre-compiler, and another one is parallelizing compiler. A pre-processor is mainly uses a sequential compiler and a low-level library of the target computer to implement high-level construct or high-level parallel constructs. And the pre-compiler approach requires some program flow analysis, dependence checking, and limited optimization towards parallelism detection. The third approach demands a fully developed parallelizing or vectorizing compiler which can automatically detect parallelism in source code and transform sequential codes into parallel constructs. So these are the different types of compiler approaches that we can use for converting a high level language to a low level language representation. And mainly the efficiency of the binding process depends on the effectiveness of the preprocessor, the pre-compiler, and the parallelizing compiler, the loader, and the OS support. So together with the efficiency, how effectively we design the program, and also along with these three approaches, we can decide the effectiveness or the efficiency of the machine. So due to the unpredictable program behavior, none of the existing compilers can be considered fully automatic or fully intelligent in detecting all types of parallelism. Next is about evolution of computer architecture. The study of computer architecture involves both hardware organization and programming or software requirements. As seen by an assembly language programmer, computer architecture is abstracted by its instruction set, which includes opcodes, that means operation codes, addressing nodes, registers, virtual memory, etc. Basically, the architecture is starting from the von Neumann architecture. Von Neumann architecture already I discussed in the previous slide. Over the past decades, computer architecture has gone through evolutionary rather than revolutionary changes. Sustaining features are those that were proven performance delivers. We started with the von Neumann architecture built as a sequential machine executing scalar data. The sequential computer was improved from bit serial to word parallel operation, and from fixed point to floating point operation. The von Neumann architecture is slow due to the sequential execution of instructions in program. So this is a figure that is representing an architecture evolution from sequential scalar computers to vector processor and parallel computers. Already you know what is a sequential machine. Sequential machines are machines that are executing instructions one after the other. So von Neumann architecture is actually following the sequential type of execution. So in order to improve the performance, after the sequential machine, there came the look-ahead machines. The look-ahead machines are actually implementing, or it is actually overlapping the execution phase as well as the fetch phase and the memory write back phase, there are different phases are there. So the look ahead machines are actually implementing the parallelism concepts. Parallelism concepts are concepts in architecture in which the performance can be improved. So in this case, instead of the sequential execution, more than one instructions can be executed at the same time. So that is the definition for parallelism. So in the case of parallelism, multiple functional units and pipelining is also implemented for in order to successively implement parallelism. So that is also shown here. From the sequential machine, look ahead came, then instruction execution or fetch bar execute overlap, that is mainly used for implementing parallelism. So there came the functional parallelism. So for functional parallelism, to attain functional parallelism, we have multiple functional unit. Pipelining was also there. So because of pipelining, implicit and explicit concepts also came. So these two concepts we will be discussing in the coming section. And memory to, and because of this explicit vector concept, memory to memory flow as well as register to register flow came. And due to this register to register flow, there are SIMD and MIMD type of machines also generated. So what is SIMD? It is single instruction stream and multiple data stream, and MIMD is multiple instruction stream and multiple data stream. So these are the main concepts behind the architectural evolution. That means these are the different architectural evolution of a processor. Next is about look ahead, parallelism and pipelining. So all these are used for improving the performance of a machine. So already you know what is a sequential machine. Sequential machines are machines that are executing instructions one after the other. So if one instruction is waiting to complete the execution of a previous instruction, that will cause some delay in the machine. So in order to improve the performance of the machine, we can execute multiple instructions at the same time. So in order to implement this parallelism, we can use look ahead techniques. So what is look ahead technique? So look ahead techniques were introduced to prefetch instructions in order to overlap instruction fetch or decode and execution to enable functional parallelism. So how will you implement functional parallelism? Functional parallelism can be implemented by two different ways. One is by means of multiple functional unit and another is by means of pipelining. So what is multiple functional unit and what is pipelining? These concepts will be coming in the coming slides in the same module itself. And also you have to know about what is scalar data and what is vector data. So by using sequential execution, we can process scalar data. Scalar data are point values or integer fixed number values. Such type of values are known as scalar values. So earlier the computer can only perform manipulations on the scalar data, but now we can also use parallelism as well as sequential execution for calculations on vector data. So what is vector data? Vector quantity is a quantity that is having magnitude as well as direction. Similarly, vector data are data that can be arranged in rows as well as columns. So suppose for an example is matrix. Matrix is actually an example for a vector data. So we can use parallelism as well as sequential execution for performing manipulations on this vector data. So many vector processors or vector operations are also there in the case of this parallelism, pipelining and multiple functional units in order to perform calculations on this vector data. Another important topic in module 1 is Flynn's classification. Michael Flynn is a scientist in 1972 introduced a classification of various computer architecture based on notions of instructions and data stream. That is the point that you have to note here, based on instructions and data stream. So there are 4 different classifications according to Flynn. 4. What are they? They are single instruction single data, SISD, SIMD, single instruction stream over multiple data stream, MIMD, multiple instruction stream over multiple data stream, MIST, multiple instruction stream and a single data stream. So these are the different 4 classification of according to Flynn. And SISD is also known as uniprocessor machine. SIMD is also known as vector processor or parallel processors, and MISD is also known as pipelined computers, and MIMD is also known as multi-computers or multiprocessor. So let's discuss in detail about this 4 different classification. Here the first machine is SISD, single instruction single data. It is also known as conventional sequential machine or uniprocessor architecture. Here you can see 3 different blocks. One is CU, control unit, PU, processing unit, MU, memory unit. And also 2 streams are here. One is known as IS, instruction stream, and DS is known as data stream. As the name indicates, SISD, which means single instruction single data. So here you will be having a single instruction stream and a single data stream. So the control unit is the one that is managing the entire architecture, or it is controlling the entire architecture. So according to the IO that is receiving at the CU, that means the control unit, it will be performing the operation. And upon receiving an IO, the CU will be taking the corresponding instruction stream from the memory unit, and it will be issuing this instruction stream to the processing unit, and the processing unit is responsible for all the calculation in this machine. And according to the IO that is received, it will be taking the data also from the memory unit. And you can see a double-headed arrow here. So the meaning of this double-headed arrow is, as the PU performs the particular calculation, and when it generates the output, the output will be sending back to the memory unit again. So it will be taking the data from the memory unit, and after the calculation it will be storing the data back to the memory unit. So that is why the reason for this double-headed arrow here. Again, when the next signal comes, the CU will be taking the instruction stream again from the control unit. So that is the meaning of this particular architecture, single instruction single data. The next one is SIMD, single instruction multiple data architecture, and this is commonly seen in vector computers that are equipped with scalar and vector hardware. And here the concept of distributed memory is also there. So let us explain the architecture. So here you can also see this CU, which is again the control unit, PE, these are known as processing elements. PE is known as processing element, and LM, that is known as the local memory. So as the name indicate, you will be having single instruction, but you will be having multiple data here. So the same instruction will be working for different data. So if you need different data, you will be having different memory. So instead of a single processor, we will be having different processing elements will be there, and each of these processing elements will have its own local memory that is indicated by PE1, PE2, PE3, etc. up to PEN. Similarly, the corresponding local memories will be LM1, LM2, LM3, etc. up to LMN. So whatever be the instruction that is coming here, that is to the CU. So the instruction stream that is coming here will be a single instruction stream, and the same instruction stream will be passing through each and every processing elements. That is the difference here. That's why it is known as single instruction stream. So the same instruction stream that is coming from the host will be receiving by the CU, and it will be passing to each and every processing element. And according to the instruction that is received at the PE, it will be loading the corresponding data to the PE from its local memory. Okay, and sometimes the PE1 will be the instruction that is coming will be, suppose for an example, it is a multiplication instruction for a multiplication operation. Sometimes this data in local memory 1 will be a matrix data, and the local memory 2 or local memory n will be a single scalar data. So the data are 2 here, but the instruction is what same. It is performing the same multiplication operation on the 2 different datas. That is the meaning of single instruction multiple data. And after performing the operation, the data will be written back to the local memory. It's on local memory. And that is all about this single instruction multiple data. That is why it is also known as distributed memory architecture. Why? Because it is all the PE. That means each and every processing elements will have its own local memory. Next is about MIMD, that is known as multiple instruction multiple data, and this architecture is mainly known as parallel computers because the concept of parallelism is actually implemented in MIMD. And also this is known as shared memory architecture because there will be a shared memory and this memory will be shared with all the processing elements. Here also you can see different blocks. One is CU, that is known as the control unit, PU, that is known as the processing unit, and the shared memory is also there. And also you can see here IS, instruction stream, DS, data stream, all these things are again here. So what is MIMD? MIMD is multiple instruction multiple data. So as the name indicates, you will be having multiple instruction and multiple datas will be also there. So if you need multiple instruction, you should have what? CU, control units will be there. Different control units will be there, and each and every control units will be issuing different instruction sets. And similarly, if you need different data streams, that means multiple data stream, then you will be having a shared memory, and from the memory, each and every processing units will be taking different sets of data. Suppose for example, you have a set of instruction. One instruction is performing multiplication, second one is performing addition, third is performing subtraction, and these are the different instruction stream. So CU1 will be sometimes taking addition, CU2 will be taking multiplication, like that. Different CUs will be taking different set of instruction. And what about the PU? Sometimes PU1 will be taking, that means the addition operation will be performing on a scalar data, and the second one is a multiplication instruction. The multiplication instruction is performing on sometimes matrix data, that means a vector data. And this is actually the difference here. So how actually it works? So here is the shared memory. The shared memory will be taking the instruction stream. So this instruction stream is receiving by the CU1, and at the same time the CUN or the nth CU will be taking another instruction stream. So these two instruction streams are entirely different, both are different, and like that I discussed in the previous slide, here IS is not same. That is the difference here. So one IO will be receiving. So according to this IO, this CU1 will be taking one instruction stream and CUN will be taking another instruction stream. And both these CUs will be passing the IS, that means its instruction, to its corresponding PU. As we are discussing about multiple data, here we need different PUs also. That means its own PU for each and every control unit. So whatever be the instruction that is receiving at a CU, it will be passed to its PU, that means its processing unit, and the processing unit will be performing its operation. The operation that is received from the control unit will be performed by the PU on its data. That means it will be taking sometimes a vector data, and sometimes PUN will be taking a scalar data. So it will be performing what manipulations there, and it will be storing the data, or the output will be stored back to the shared memory itself. So that is the usage of shared memory. The shared memory is supplying both the instruction and the data to the CUs and PUs. So the same memory is using, and it is sharing between the PUs, different PUs as well as different CUs. That is all about MIMD. Next is another architecture which is known as multiple instruction single data. It is also known as systolic arrays. So here what happens? So here there is a memory. Also this is CUs are here, PUs are here. As the name indicates, here you will be having multiple instruction, but the data will be same. The same data will be passing through all the PUs. And here you can see CU, the memory is here. The memory is having program and data. It is actually supplying program and data. Different instruction sets are coming to different CU. Here you can see CU1, CU2 up to CUN. Different control units are there. Also different programming units are also here. But the thing here is, as the instruction stream, the different instruction streams are supplying to different CUs. But the DS, that means the data stream that is passing through this all these PUs is same. That is, suppose I am going to perform a multiplication, division, subtraction, addition. All these are the different instruction sets that are available in my memory, and the memory is supplying these instruction, these different instruction set to all these different CUs. But I am supplying, that means the memory is supplying the same data. That means if I have a 2 cross 2 matrix and I am going to supply the same matrix to these different PUs, what will happen there? The same the different operation, that means multiplication will be performing on that 2 cross 2 matrix, addition will be performing on that 2 cross 2 matrix, like that it happens. That is the meaning of multiple instruction single data. And whatever be the operation that is performed, after performing all this operation, the final result will be stored again back to the memory. That is the architecture of MIST, multiple instruction single data. And the main things, or some of the important things that you have to know about this architecture is, MIMD is actually used for general purpose computation, and it is actually known as the most popular parallel model. And SIMD and MIST, it is actually used for special purpose computations like scientific computations and all. And the next relevant one is, after this MIMD, next comes SIMD, and the least one or the least popular one is MIST. Next is about parallel computers and vector computers. Parallel computers are those that execute programs in MIMD mode, that means multiple instruction, multiple data mode. So you'll be having multiple instructions and you'll be having multiple data. At the same time, this multiple instruction will be processing multiple data. So there are two major classes of parallel computers. They are shared memory multiprocessor and message passing multi-computer. These are the main two classification of parallel computers. In the same module itself, we will be discussing in detail about the shared memory multiprocessor and message passing multi-computers. But now I will give just a brief introduction about these two. The processors in a multiprocessor system communicate with each other through shared variables in a common memory. That means in the case of shared memory multiprocessor, there will be a shared memory and all the processors in that machine will be sharing that shared memory. And the common memory, this shared memory is actually known as the common memory. So this common memory or the shared memory will be communicating using shared variables with these processors. That is about shared memory multiprocessor. And each computer node in a multi-computer system has its own local memory, and that local memory will not be shared with other processor or node. So here the node is actually about the processor. Node is actually considering as a processor. So in the case of multi-computer, there will not be any shared memory, and each of the processor will be having its own local memory. Hope you remember the distributed architecture that we learned earlier, that is LM1, LM2, each and every piece will have its own local memory. Similarly, here also in the case of multi-computer system, each and every processor will have its own local memory, and that local memories are not shared with any other nodes. So how will the communication happen? So in order to communicate in a multi-computer system, we will be using message passing mechanism. So intercommunication, inter-processor communication will be done through message passing in between the processor. That is about the two classification of parallel computers. Another important thing is vector processor. So vector processors are mainly used for performing computations on vector data. So So in order to perform vector computations on vector data, we will be using vector instructions. So explicit vector instructions were introduced with the appearance of this vector processor, and basically there are two families of this vector processors. Mainly they are memory to memory architecture and register to register architecture. Memory to memory architecture supports the pipelined flow of vector operands directly from the memory to pipelines and then back to the memory. That is about memory to memory architecture. The flow will be between memories. And register to register architecture uses vector registers to interface between the memory and the functional pipeline. That is about register to register and memory to memory. And another important branch of the architecture tree is SIMD computers. It is for the synchronized vector processing, actually used for vector processing. And an SIMD computer exploits spatial parallelism rather than temporal parallelism. So how it is using the spatial parallelism? Mainly through the array of processing elements, as we saw in the last slide. That is the SIMD computing. You hope you remember that the array of PEs, that is the LM, local memories, will be there for each and every PEs, and it is achieving the spatial parallelism through the use of this PEs, array of PEs. Here the given figure actually shows the developmental layers of a parallel computers. So in this layer, the bottommost layer, which is known as a hardware architecture, so it is actually shows that it is machine dependent. Why it is machine dependent? Hardware configuration differ from machine to machine, even those of the same model. And what about the address space? Address space of a processor in a computer systems vary among different architecture. It actually depends on the memory organization, which is machine dependent. So these features are up to the designer and should match the target application domains. And if we want to develop an application program and programming environment which are machine independent and independent of machine architecture, the user programs can be ported to many programs or many computers with minimum conversion cost. So high level languages and communication models depends on the architectural choice made in a computer system. From a programmer's point of view, these two layers should be architectural transparent. That means the applications and the programming environment will be entirely machine independent. But the addressing space, hardware architecture, and these two are completely machine dependent, and the language supported communication model will come in between these two. And if you are checking the programming languages such as Fortran, C, C++, Pascal, Ada, so and so, it can be supported by computers. That's why it will come in between this machine dependent and independent feature. And the communication model, shared variables versus message passing are almostly machine dependent. And these are all about this particular part. Thank you so much. This is the reference that I used. Thank you so much.